Hi, I'm Maura. I used to think the worst thing a father could do was disappear, but mine stayed, and every night at 2 a.m., he made my grandfather beg until his voice cracked like glass. From the next room, I watched. I heard him scream, "You owe me everything!" I bit through my lip to stay silent. I filmed it. I showed the police, and when the officer looked me dead in the eyes, he said something that made my father collapse to the floor. You think you know how this ends? Think again. Before we dive in, what time are you hearing this? Tell me in the comments. Because for me, it all started at 2 a.m. I don't know when the house stopped feeling like home. Maybe it was the first night I heard the voices through the walls. Maybe it was long before that. My name's Maura Roth. I'm 38, single, back in my childhood home in Austin, Texas. Not because I wanted to be, but because Grandpa Lowell needed care and no one else in the family was willing to step up. Dad said he couldn't handle it alone. Mom's been gone for years. My older brother disappeared into some job in Oregon and only calls on birthdays. So here I am, again. It was 1:56 a.m. when I woke up, again. The house was too quiet, the kind of quiet that doesn't let you sleep. Then came the sound, a soft, dragging shuffle, the creak of floorboards I used to sneak across when I was a kid. Then his voice, Dad. You need to learn to be grateful. I froze. That word, grateful. It sliced through the silence like a switchblade. I lay still, the sheet pulled up to my chin, barely breathing. There it was again, the same low voice, followed by something softer. A whimper? A cough? I told myself it was nothing. That Grandpa was just confused. He was old, 85 last month, and sometimes he said strange things. Sometimes he forgot where he was. Sometimes he forgot who he was talking to. But tonight felt different. The air was heavier, like the house itself didn't want to breathe. I sat up, careful not to let the mattress squeak. The hallway outside my room was dimly lit by that familiar flicker from under my father's door. Always at 2 a.m., that light came on, like clockwork, like ritual. That glow had become something I dreaded. I used to love that hallway. Now, it felt like a crime scene waiting to be discovered. I whispered, "Who says that to their father?" The silence didn't answer. My heart was racing, but my feet moved anyway, slow across the carpet, toward that flickering line of light. I stopped just short of his door, pressed my ear against the wood. I heard a low, trembling whisper. "Please, stop." Grandpa's voice, fragile, broken. Then came a sound, a dull thud. Nothing loud, but heavy, like something soft hitting something hard. My whole body stiffened. I didn't move, didn't breathe. I bit down on my lower lip so hard I tasted iron. My legs wanted to bolt, but my brain screamed, "No, not yet. Don't open the door. Don't make it real." I backed away slowly, back into the safety of my room. If you could call it safety. That hallway light still flickered behind me like a warning sign. My hand reached for the edge of my nightstand to steady myself, but my fingers trembled. What if I'm wrong? What if I'm not? I crawled into bed, but sleep didn't follow. I lay there for hours, watching shadows crawl across the ceiling as the grandfather clock ticked toward morning. At exactly 2:03 a.m., I whispered to the darkness, "If it happens again tomorrow, I'll record it." It wasn't bravery, it was something else, a kind of quiet desperation. I wasn't ready to confront the truth, but I couldn't keep pretending I didn't hear what I heard. Something was happening, something wrong. I pressed the side of my face into the pillow, willing the tears to stay put. My father, the man who once taught me how to ride a bike, who carried me on his shoulders through thunderstorms. Could he really be doing this? Could he be hurting his own father? The question curled up inside me like a sickness. I didn't want the answer, but I needed it. The night dragged on, slow and cruel. And when the sun finally cracked the sky, I didn't feel any warmer. She picked up her phone and opened the camera app, her hand trembling slightly. I adjusted the brightness, lowered it so it wouldn't glow too obviously in the dark. My fingers hovered over the record button. I wasn't even sure I'd go through with it. But then I remembered Grandpa's voice. "Please, stop." That whisper had clung to me all day like a stain I couldn't wash off. It was nearly 1:45 a.m. I crept out of bed in socks, careful not to let the floor creak. The hallway was colder tonight, or maybe that was just me imagining things. I slipped the phone onto the top shelf of the bookcase across from my dad's door. Angled just right, just enough to catch the opening of the door. I hit record. The screen glowed red, just a dot, a heartbeat. If he catches me, I muttered under my breath, already rehearsing a dozen excuses. I was checking on Grandpa. I thought I heard something. I couldn't sleep. Lies made of fear and obligation. Back in my room, I didn't crawl under the blanket. I sat on the edge of the bed, arms wrapped around myself. The clock beside me ticked louder than usual. 1:58 a.m., 2 minutes. I wanted to look away, pretend none of this was happening. I whispered, maybe it'll just be nothing, just an old man mumbling, just my imagination. But I knew better. The house held its breath with me. At exactly 2 a.m., the door creaked. The old hinges didn't stand a chance. Even from my room, I could hear it, the slow, deliberate open, like the start of something you can't stop. I leaned forward, barely breathing. Then came his voice, calm, familiar, but it carried a weight that twisted my stomach. "You don't appreciate what I do for you, old man." I froze. His tone wasn't loud, but it wasn't kind either. It was a practiced kind of anger, the kind that didn't need volume to sting. Then another sound, a faint, almost inaudible protest. "Grandpa, I didn't mean to." Then something fell, a hollow thump. My hands clenched the edge of the bed, hard. I bolted up and crept back to the door, easing it open just enough to see the hallway, the phone still steady, still recording. The light under my father's door flickered again. Through the slight crack in his door, I saw it. My dad stood over Grandpa, one hand clamped around his arm too tight, not hitting. But something about the way he was gripping him, jerking him forward, was wrong. Just wrong. "You should be thankful I didn't put you in a home." His voice came out like poison wrapped in silk. "I am grateful, please." Grandpa's voice cracked. That word again, grateful. Like some twisted password in this house. Tears welled in my eyes before I could stop them. I covered my mouth, afraid I might cry out. And then, out of old instinct, I bit my lip. Hard. The taste of metal rushed in, warm and bitter. It didn't stop the shaking. I stared at the door. The hallway light blinked, just once. The red recording light. On my phone pulsed like a slow drumbeat. I should have stopped it, burst in, screamed. But I didn't move. I stayed still and let the moment burn into me. My father didn't shout. He didn't strike him. But what he did, how he said it, how he stared down at his own father like he was nothing, it chilled me deeper than any slap could have. I stayed there, silent, until the silence ended. Footsteps. He was leaving the room. I backed into the shadows of my doorway, just in time as his shape passed through the crack in the door. He paused, turned toward the hallway. For a terrifying second, he looked straight ahead, right where my phone was hidden. I thought my heart would stop, but he didn't see it, or if he did, he didn't react. He muttered something. At first I thought it was to himself. Then he said it again, clearer, quieter. "You'll thank me one day too, Maura." My blood turned to ice. Was he talking to Grandpa? To me? Did he know I was there? He walked past and into the kitchen. The faucet ran, a cupboard opened, normal domestic sounds that suddenly felt sick. I waited. When I was sure the coast was clear, I slid across the hallway and grabbed my phone. I didn't even look at the screen. I rushed back to my room, locked the door, and sat down on the floor. Only then did I replay the footage. The grainy video showed the door, just barely cracked, and my father's voice clearly. The way he towered over Grandpa. The way he grabbed him, the tremble in Grandpa's hands. The way he said grateful like it was a crime not to be. And then the line. "You'll thank me one day too, Maura." My whole body locked up. I couldn't stop the tears. I whispered, "He can't keep getting away with this." Just then, footsteps. Outside my door, they stopped. A soft knock. "Maura, are you awake?" His voice was too soft. That kind of careful tone you only use when you're trying not to wake someone, or when you're making sure they didn't already hear something they weren't supposed to. I didn't answer. I held my breath and stared at the door, watching for the shadow of his feet beneath it. He waited. Then he walked away. I stayed frozen like that for almost an hour, long after the sound of his footsteps faded down the hall. Only when the morning light began creeping in through the blinds did I finally lie down, fully clothed, still clutching the phone in my hand. Sleep never came. By the time I stepped into the kitchen, the sun was already brushing through the slats, casting lines across the counter like a grid. My dad was sitting at the table, nursing a cup of black coffee like it was just another day. "Morning," he said, barely glancing up. "Sleep okay?" "Yeah, fine," I lied. My throat tightened around the word. He looked at me and gave a little nod. Like we were just two adults sharing a house, sharing responsibilities. Not a father and daughter playing chicken with the truth. I made myself a cup of tea. My hands were unsteady, but I didn't let them shake too much. I sipped slowly, standing instead of sitting. I didn't want to be at that table with him. In the distance, from Grandpa's room, I heard the familiar, dry cough that always showed up in the mornings. My instinct was to go to him, check if he was okay. But Harlan didn't even look toward the hallway. "He needs rest," he said flatly. "Let him sleep, and don't let him wander tonight. He gets confused. It's dangerous." I turned to look at him. He didn't meet my eyes. Just took another sip of coffee and flipped the page of the newspaper like he was reading something that actually mattered more. Dangerous? The only danger in that house was sitting right across from me. I nodded again because I didn't know what else to do. Later, I left, said I needed groceries, drove 5 blocks past the nearest store, and parked under a tree at the edge of a quiet park. There was no one around, no witnesses. I opened my phone and watched the video again. I didn't need to. Every second of it was burned into my brain, but I needed to see it from the outside, to prove to myself it was real. I watched my father gripping Grandpa's arm, heard the way he spoke to him, like he was some burden that owed him more than gratitude could ever repay. And then, his voice, directed into the void. "You'll thank me one day too, Maura." That line wasn't just haunting, it was a challenge. I thought about going straight to the police, showing them the video, reporting elder abuse. But a voice inside me kept whispering doubts. What if they don't see it the way I do? What if they think I'm overreacting? What if they talk to him first and he finds out I recorded it? What if it gets worse for Grandpa? I locked the phone and leaned back against the seat. The ceiling of the car spun slightly from exhaustion, from the kind of fear that doesn't come all at once, but creeps in slowly, filling you until you're paralyzed. That's when the memory hit. I was 9, hiding behind the couch in our old house. My mom had forgotten to lower her voice. My father never raised his. Not then, not yet. But his words cut anyway. "You're so ungrateful, you know that?" he hissed. My mother didn't fight back. She just looked down and whispered, "Keep quiet, Maura. It keeps the peace." That phrase stuck like gum on the bottom of my childhood. Back at home, I walked through the hallway quietly. Grandpa's room was dim, his blinds drawn halfway. I peeked in. He was resting, or pretending to. He didn't open his eyes when I stepped closer. I adjusted the blanket over his legs, pretending like I hadn't seen the bruise on his wrist earlier that week. As I smoothed the sheet beneath his pillow, something crackled. A folded note. I slipped it out gently. The paper was thin, creased like it had been hidden for a while. Written in shaky, uneven handwriting. "He hears everything. Don't speak." I felt my whole body go still. Was he warning me? Did he know what I'd recorded? Or was he trying to protect me the only way he still could? I stood there holding that note for a long time. My lips still ached from the bite the night before. I brushed my fingers over it. It was tender, healing. But the pain was a reminder. Silence has a cost. I tucked the note into my pocket and straightened the blanket again, just in time to hear the floorboard creak behind me. A long shadow stretched across the rug. She slips the note into her pocket, pretending to adjust the blanket. My fingertips brushed against the sheet again for no reason other than to buy myself a second. Just 1 second to breathe without shaking. Behind me, the floor creaked again. I turned, casually, like I hadn't been doing anything at all. My father stood just inside the threshold of the room, arms crossed, leaning against the frame, like he'd been there longer than I realized. "Dinner's ready," he said, his tone smooth, too smooth. "Come sit down before it gets cold." I followed him into the dining room, the air dense and strange. The smell of roasted meat filled the space, but something underneath it, something metallic, seemed stronger. The table was already set, knives aligned perfectly, forks catching the fading sunlight through the blinds. He took his usual seat at the head of the table. Grandpa sat on the right, mostly quiet, poking at his plate with little effort. I took the seat across from him, placing my napkin in my lap just to keep my hands from fidgeting. No one spoke for the first few minutes, just the clink of silverware. I cut my chicken too slowly, chewing even slower. I felt like I had to match the rhythm of the room, or it might all come apart. Then my father cleared his throat. "Funny thing," he said, slicing into his steak with calm precision. "I found your phone in the hallway last night, right near my door." My fork froze halfway to my mouth. For half a second, I forgot how to breathe. "You really should be more careful," he added without looking up. "Wouldn't want to lose it." I swallowed hard. "Thanks. I didn't realize I dropped it." He nodded once. "You've always been forgetful, just like your mother." That name. He always used it like a scalpel. I saw the corner of his mouth pull into something that wasn't quite a smile. Across the table, Grandpa didn't lift his head, but his hands were trembling slightly. I picked at the vegetables on my plate and kept my eyes down. "You've been sleeping well?" my father asked after a pause. "Fine," I said too quickly. "You hear anything strange at night? This house makes the oddest sounds." My heart was beating faster now, thumping right against the inside of my ribs. I glanced up. His eyes were already on me. "Just creaks and groans. Old houses do that." He chuckled. "Yeah, they do." Every word out of his mouth felt like a test, like he was poking at the edge of something, trying to see if I'd flinch. I kept my voice even, but inside my mind was racing. He knew, or at least he suspected. The hallway light above us flickered once. We all noticed it. My father glanced upward, then gave a little smirk like the house itself was part of his joke. Grandpa finally spoke, his voice hoarse but clear. "You two stop this nonsense." I looked over. That's when I saw it, his wrist, barely visible beneath the cuff of his sleeve. The same spot I'd seen bruised 2 nights ago. Except now the mark had darkened, like it had aged into something undeniable. My grip on the fork tightened. The urge to stand up and shout, to say what I knew, it surged and then slipped away again, crushed by the same weight that had silenced my mother for years. I excused myself from the table, said I had a headache. Neither of them protested. In my room, I locked the door behind me and sat on the edge of the bed. I didn't cry. I didn't even speak. I just unlocked my phone and opened the video again. I watched it from beginning to end. This time, I noticed something I hadn't before. A flash in the mirror behind him. A reflection. My own face, just barely visible in the hallway. Wide eyes, pale skin. Lips pressed together so hard they disappeared. I hadn't just seen it, I had been in it. Captured, frozen. Part of the moment I was trying to expose. It made my stomach twist. I wasn't just a witness anymore. I was tangled in it. I set the phone on the dresser and stood, suddenly restless. I didn't know what I was looking for. Fresh air, an escape, maybe just distance from that screen. But when I came back an hour later, something was wrong. The phone wasn't where I left it. I found it under my pillow. That wasn't where I'd put it. My hands shook as I picked it up and checked the screen. One new video file. I tapped it open. It was short, just 2 seconds. But it was enough. It was footage of me, asleep. The camera angle low, like someone had set it on the edge of my nightstand. My chest rising and falling gently, unaware, defenseless. I dropped the phone. The air in my lungs burned. Whoever filmed it had been in my room. The phone buzzed again. A message flashed on the screen. Delete your video. Some things are better left unseen. The screen goes black, and I finally realize I'm no longer just observing danger. I'm inside it. I drive through the early morning streets of downtown Austin, the windshield reflecting the faint orange glow of dawn. My knuckles grip the steering wheel so tightly, I swear I've left half of myself on that cold leather. The 2 seconds of that video that showed me asleep keep playing on a loop in my mind. This has to stop, I whisper, even though the words feel lost before they leave my throat. I pull into the parking garage at the police station and sit with the engine running for a long moment. The silence inside the car is nothing compared to what I'm about to walk into. My phone sits on the passenger seat, the screen still lit with the message, "Delete your video." Some things are better left unseen. It's a threat, a warning, a line drawn in the sand. I inhale slowly. I'm here anyway. Inside, the air smells like institutional coffee. Bitter, stale, persistent. Fluorescent lights hum overhead. The walls are a pale, washed-out blue. Nothing here feels like home. I find Officer Daniels at a desk near the lobby. He's mid-50s, gray hair, kindly eyes, but I can tell he's weighed with too many stories like mine. I sit down across from him and lay my phone on the desk. "I have footage," I begin. "You need to see this." His fingers drumming on the wood make me harder to look at. When I flick play, his face stays calm, but his eyes narrow just enough. The video shows Dad, Grandpa, the door, the grip. I watch him watch. After the clip ends, Daniels exhales. "I'm sorry," he says quietly. I feel my heart spike. "I can't use this as evidence unless your grandfather files the report himself." I blink, disoriented. "He's terrified of my father," I say. "You saw what happened." He doesn't answer right away. Then, "I understand, but legally it's not enough." That stops me. I leave the station feeling heavier than when I walked in. The red lights of the squiggly exit sign blur in the rearview mirror. As I pull out, I glance back and see Officer Daniels standing by the glass door holding his phone to his ear. His gaze is hard to read. Concern? Or something darker? I let the question hover as I drive away. Back home, the house looms. Too quiet. Grandpa's rocking chair is still in the corner of the den, untouched for hours. The heaviness of it all swallows the warmth of the morning light. I walk through the hallway, every footstep louder than the last one, until I stop in his room. It's empty. In the kitchen, Dad is already gone, the smell of coffee lingering. I pick up a sticky note stuck to the fridge door. Meeting at noon. Normal. I walk outside and sit on the front steps. I pick at the scuff on the concrete and try to breathe. I think, what if I just walk away? What if I leave all of this behind? But Grandpa's note whispers in my ear. He hears everything. Don't speak. Leaving would mean abandoning him, and that I cannot do. I open the camera app again, but I turn the phone off. The film doesn't matter now. It's not about evidence out there. It's about truth in here. My finger presses the screen, but I don't record. I just sit. I listen to the wind tickle the leaves in the yard. I feel the weight of the silence I've carried since I was a little girl, the quiet when Mom suffered, the quiet when Dad yelled, and realize that silence is part of the crime. Evening comes and the hallway light flickers once, just like before. I pause mid-step. My feet don't move. I look at the doorframe, and there's a smear of something dark. I downturn my head so fast, I catch the scuff of my chin on the collar of my shirt. I know this is no longer just about what happens at 2 a.m. It's about what happens when the sun is out. The shadows don't go away. The light outside was fading into that colorless gray-blue just before sunset. I stepped back inside the house and closed the door behind me slowly. Like if I made too much noise, I'd wake something that shouldn't be woken. The air was still. Not just quiet, dead. Every curtain was drawn, every lamp left off. The living room sat hollow, like a memory someone forgot to put back. And Grandpa's chair. It still rocked slightly, like someone had just stood up. But there was no one there. "Grandpa," I called out, my voice softer than I meant it to be. Nothing. I moved through the house quickly, each step louder than the last. I opened his bedroom door, empty. The bathroom, nothing. The guest room, still. I tried not to panic, I really did, but I knew something was wrong. I pulled out my phone and hit Dad's number. It rang longer than usual before he answered, calm as ever. "Hey, where's Grandpa?" There was a pause, just long enough to make my spine tense. Then, "Relax, he's fine. I took him to the clinic. It's Sunday, it's closed." He chuckled lightly. "Emergency visit. He needed to be checked out. Heart thing." I stared at the wall like I could see through it. "Why didn't you tell me?" "I didn't want to worry you." He hung up before I could respond. My grip tightened around the phone. I walked back through the kitchen, past the pantry, and stopped. A weird instinct pulled me there. Something deep in my gut that said, "Look deeper." I flicked on the basement light and creaked the door open. The air hit me first, cooler, still, and thick with the scent of mildew and something metallic. I stepped down carefully. The wood stairs creaked with each movement. The basement was cluttered, as basements are. Old holiday boxes, broken furniture, forgotten parts of the past. But tucked behind a stack of boxes labeled Sarah's Books, my mother's name, I saw it. A folded cushion from a wheelchair, Grandpa's, the corner stained dark red. Old or fresh, I couldn't tell. But it was there. I took a slow breath. Then I heard the front door open above me. The distinct sound of boots on hardwood. "Maura?" Dad's voice too calm. I didn't answer. "You shouldn't be down there," he said, stepping onto the top stair. He descended slowly, his shadow stretching long and thin against the far wall. "You think you're helping, but you're not. You're just making things harder." I turned to face him, forcing my voice not to crack. "Where is he?" "He's safe," he said smoothly, "because I keep him that way." The words scraped against me. "No," I said, louder than I expected. "You don't keep him safe. You keep him quiet." He stopped 2 steps above me, his expression unreadable. You don't protect, you control. That's all you've ever done. With him, with Mom, with me. A long pause, then a flicker in his eye. Not anger, something colder. You've always been too curious, Maura, he said, voice low. Just like your mother, and look where that got her. My chest tightened. What did you do to her? I asked. He tilted his head. She left. You were just too young to remember the full picture. A bulb above us flickered, the same one that always did at 2 a.m. But it was only early evening now. Somehow that made it worse, like time itself was warning me. He turned without another word and climbed the stairs, slow and steady. Left the basement door wide open. I stood there for a few seconds, heart racing, and then bolted. I rushed up, past the den, down the hallway to Grandpa's room. Empty. But on his bed was my phone. I didn't leave it there. The screen lit up on its own. A video started to play. Dad was behind the wheel of his truck, the sun setting behind him. He looked into the camera like he was talking to someone sitting right next to him. Some lessons, he said with a small smile, are better taught away from home. The screen cut to black. I didn't even feel my feet hit the floor as I turned, grabbed my keys off the counter, and ran out the front door. The driveway was empty. His truck was gone. But I could still hear the echo of his voice in that calm, rehearsed tone as my phone buzzed again in my pocket. I glanced down, a voicemail. You'll understand when it's your turn to be grateful. My hands shook as I climbed into my car, the engine stuttering to life. There was only one place he could have taken him. The old family cabin sat like a forgotten memory at the edge of the pines, just beyond the reach of any cell signal or street light. As I turned off the main road and onto the gravel path, the tires crunched loud enough to drown out every thought except the one looping in my head. You'll understand when it's your turn to be grateful. The phrase pulsed like a heartbeat in my mind, each word coded in something colder than control, inheritance. It was more than just manipulation, it was tradition, his version of love. Trees pressed in close on either side, their long shadows creeping across my windshield as the headlights carved a narrow tunnel through the woods. Every bend in the road felt like it might open to something I wasn't ready to see. I hadn't been out here since my mother's funeral. I was 22 then, numb and quiet, still clinging to the idea that maybe the version of my father I was raised to believe in wasn't a lie. I remembered sitting on the porch steps, watching the lake ripple, while he stood inside telling guests she was tired, she just gave up. But now I knew better. Halfway down the path, I eased off the gas and pulled onto the shoulder, parking beneath a thick veil of branches. The last thing I wanted was to be heard. I grabbed my phone, turned off the flashlight, and continued the rest of the way on foot. Dirt crunched under my boots. The air smelled of moss and wet bark, a scent that once meant peace. Now it felt like a warning. The cabin appeared between the trees like it had been waiting for me. The porch light flickered, barely holding on. From where I stood, hidden behind a tree, I could just make out 2 figures through the window, my father and my grandfather. No shouting, no threats, just a stillness that felt staged. I moved closer, crouching low, until I was just beneath the window. The wood paneling scratched my back as I pressed against the cabin wall, careful not to make a sound. Inside, I heard my father's voice, low, controlled. You told her, didn't you? About your mistake. A long pause. Then my grandfather's response, raspy but steady. She deserves the truth. Harlan sighed. The truth destroyed this family once. I'm not letting it happen again. Another pause. A chair scraped across the floor. My heart thudded against my ribs. This wasn't about the abuse. It was something older, something that had been buried in these walls. Then my grandfather said something that made my blood run cold. You made her mother disappear with your lies." I clutched my phone and hit record. Inside, Harlan's voice sharpened. "You think she can handle the truth? She's just like her mother, soft, weak." I felt heat rise to my face. But it wasn't shame or fear. It was something fiercer. All these years, I'd been fed a version of my mother that painted her as fragile, broken. But what if she hadn't been broken at all? What if she'd simply been silenced? I leaned in closer to get the audio clear. My breath fogged the glass, and that's when I saw my reflection, not cowering, not hiding, staring back with fury. I caught every word now. "You always blamed her," Grandpa said quietly. "But she knew who you really were. That's why she tried to leave. She tried to take you both," Harlan snapped. "You were a child. She would have ruined everything." That was it. There it was. My entire life had been shaped by that lie. Suddenly, Harlan stood up. The table rattled under his hand. He looked toward the window and locked eyes with me. He didn't flinch. He didn't yell. He just stared, then slowly mouthed the words, "Just like her." My breath caught. I stumbled back from the window, nearly tripping over a root as I turned and ran. I didn't stop to look back. I didn't need to. I already knew. He'd come after me. I didn't wait to see how fast. I ran along the path I'd taken, lungs burning, heart hammering in rhythm with the gravel crunch beneath my boots. My car sat in shadow just ahead, hidden behind a wall of pine, engine cold. I dove inside and slammed the door, locking it out of reflex. My fingers shook as I pulled out my phone, still recording, the screen smeared with sweat and dirt. For a few seconds, I just sat there, breathing, thinking. But then I saw the porch light flicker behind me. I couldn't run anymore. I got out of the car and walked back toward the cabin. Slowly this time, not as prey, not anymore. Each step steadied me. The air was damp, heavy with pine and something metallic beneath it. Moonlight glazed the lake like broken glass, everything frozen in place except for the distant creak of the old dock shifting with the wind. I pushed the door open. He was standing in the middle of the room, hands at his sides like he'd been rehearsing this moment. My grandfather was slumped in the corner, still conscious, still watching. His eyes met mine and said one thing without words: "Be careful." "You shouldn't have come here," Harlan said, voice low and steady. "You shouldn't have lied," I answered, closing the door behind me. The silence after that was dense. We both stood still, like two people waiting for a gunshot that hadn't come yet. He took a step closer, tilting his head. "You think you know what you saw." "I know what I heard," I said. "You think your mother understood what family means?" "She understood it too well. That's why she tried to leave." That line stopped him. His mouth tensed, not in anger, but recognition. He knew I wasn't bluffing anymore. His feet shifted. A twitch in his arm, then he moved fast, lunging toward me with a speed I hadn't seen since I was a child. I stepped back hard, nearly tripping, and held up the phone between us like a blade. "It's already uploaded," I said. "If anything happens to me, it goes everywhere." He froze. A beat. 2. The lie hung in the air, heavier than the truth had ever felt. I watched his face cycle. Fury, disbelief, calculation. "You're not her," he said, bitter and breathless. "You don't have her strength." "No," I whispered. "I have her proof." And I hit play. The room filled with his own voice, damning, undeniable. "You told her, didn't you? About your mistake. She deserves the truth. The truth destroyed this family once. I'm not letting it happen again." Lowell sobbed, not with fear, but with something closer to release. His shoulders shook, but his hands, for the first time in years, didn't. Harlan staggered back, like the air had left the room. I didn't move. Then headlights swept across the window. He turned toward them. "You called them." I didn't flinch. "No, you did, when you crossed the line." The door opened behind me. Footsteps, slow, deliberate. Officer Daniels stepped into the cabin, hand on his. Holstered gun, but not drawing it. His eyes took in everything. The expression on my face, the sag in Harlan's shoulders, the tears on my grandfather's cheeks. Without saying a word, I handed him the phone. Daniels took it and nodded. "You did the right thing, ma'am," he said softly. And just like that, the air shifted. The cabin no longer pressed in on me. It let go. He cuffed Harlan calmly, reading his rights in that same even tone I'd once mistaken for indifference. My father didn't resist, didn't say a word. As they led him outside, I stood in the doorway, the cold wind moving through the trees without accusation. Just motion. Lowell sat quietly by the fireplace, staring into the flames. When I stepped toward him, he reached for my hand. "She'd be proud of you," he whispered. I nodded, tears rising but not falling. "Maybe now we can sleep." He smiled faintly, eyes drifting shut. Not in escape this time, but peace. Later that night, back in my room, I lay awake in the quiet. The kind that's not empty, but waiting. Then my phone lit up on the nightstand. A message, unknown number, one word, soon. I stared at the screen for what felt like a full minute. The air around me was quiet. Too quiet. That kind of stillness that makes you wonder if the world is holding its breath. I let the phone rest on the table and leaned back into the couch, the cushions sinking in like I hadn't sat down properly in days. 2 weeks had passed, the bruises were gone, the chaos had calmed, but the silence, it had changed, not haunted anymore, just hollow. The Roth house felt bigger now, almost too big for one person. I found myself walking from room to room, like I was checking in on someone or maybe something. I touched the walls as I passed, not looking for damage, just needing to remind myself this place could hold peace too. I stopped by the old hallway, where the light used to flicker at 2 a.m. It glowed steady now, humming low like a machine finally at rest. Outside, the trees didn't creak like they used to. And inside, I no longer jumped at every noise. That was new. I was making tea in the kitchen when my phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. But this time, it wasn't a word. It was a video file. The timestamp made my heart stutter. 2 a.m. For a second, I couldn't move. My fingers hovered over the screen, my breath caught in my throat like my body didn't know if this was danger or gift. But curiosity, or maybe courage, took over. I tapped play. The screen lit up slowly. My grandfather, Lowell, was sitting upright in bed at the care home. His posture was soft but solid, eyes tired but clear. A nurse's voice drifted from off-camera. "He said he wanted you to have this." Then he spoke. "You did what I couldn't. You broke the silence." He smiled faintly, like he already knew this would be the last time I saw him. "Don't ever be afraid of the dark again." My throat burned. But this time, I didn't cry from fear. It wasn't pain either. It was something warmer, a letting go. I sat down, letting the phone rest on my chest, the weight of his words sinking deep. I closed my eyes and just listened to the quiet. Not because I was afraid, but because I finally knew what it meant to feel safe. Later that night, I walked down the hall again. The light, the same bulb that once cast terrifying shadows, glowed calmly above me. I reached up and flicked it off, then back on. A small, deliberate gesture, a choice. That light no longer held fear. It was just light. And I was still here. I opened every window in the house. The night air rolled in slow and cool, sweeping the rooms with moonlight. It wasn't sterile or sharp like it used to be. It was honest. I stood by the window for a while, just breathing. Then, for the first time in a long time, I whispered, "I'm grateful." Not for what happened, not for the pain, but for the truth, for surviving it. I sat by the old rocking chair, the same one I found empty 2 weeks ago. It creaked gently with the breeze. I took out my AUS phone and began to record. This time, the camera faced me. "If anyone ever tells you to be grateful for pain," I said, voice steady, "don't listen. Be grateful for your strength instead." I ended the recording, saved it, didn't share it, not yet. It wasn't for the world, not now, maybe someday. The next morning, just as the sky started to change from black to blue, my phone rang again. A real call this time. It was the care home. Lowell had passed peacefully in his sleep. At exactly 2:00 a.m., no pain, no fear, no begging, just stillness, just rest. I sat with that for a while, then I got up, changed my clothes, and stood at the front door. The keys in my hand were warm from being held too long. I opened the door slowly, the air outside already touched by light. I turned back for a moment, just once. The house didn't look like it had before. It looked like something had finally been lifted. I locked the door behind me. The dawn brushed across my face, and I whispered, not to anyone, really, just to the wind, "It ends with me." Then I walked forward, toward the sunrise.